Good evening. This meeting will be held with all of our council members present, participating in person. The public can join this meeting via Zoom. In order to allow the town clerk enough time to make sure everything is working properly and folks are able to join the meeting, we will begin the meeting in about 5 minutes or so. Thank you for being patient with us as we adjust to hosting electronic meetings. As it relates to public comment, anyone who wishes to speak during the comment periods should type their name and address in the chat box, and you will be called on and unmuted when it's your turn to speak. Public comments that were submitted to the town clerk prior to the meeting will be read first by myself or by the Mayor Pro Tem. As usual, public comments will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Thank you. The regular meeting of the Southern Shores Town Council for October the 6th, 2020 is now in session. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. During a moment of silence this evening, I would ask you to join me in recognizing the impact that COVID-19 is having on so many individuals, families, and businesses, not only here in Dare County, but throughout our state and country. Hopefully, at some point in the not too distant future, this pandemic will be behind us. Please join me in asking or praying for that. Thank you. Thank you. Council, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Leo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any further discussion? If not, I'd ask for a vote to approve the agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you, Matt. We have an agenda for this evening, folks. Item E, the consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented to us, Council. As you can see, it's the minutes of 2 meetings. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Aye. Go ahead.
I move to approve the consent agenda, which includes the 2 sets of minutes of meetings.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
And I'll second it.
Thank you, Leo. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the consent agenda indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion's made and carried to move to adopt the consent agenda. This time I'd call on David Cole for a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to give you and the council members just a little bit of a bio on Officer Tracy Mann. She is born and raised in Dare County. After graduating from Manio High School, she served 4 years in the Navy while earning a bachelor's degree in management studies from UMUC. After her military service, she attended Appalachian State University and completed a bachelor's in psychology. 2002, she started her career in law enforcement with the Dare County Sheriff's Office. Then she spent a couple of years with the town of Duck before making Southern Shores Police Department her home in 2010. In 2015, and actually in 2014, we were blessed to have received a COPS grant for a school resource officer. And she started that position as a school resource officer for Kitty Hawk Elementary School in 2015. While working also with the Southern Shores Police Department, she has earned her advanced law enforcement certificate, become a certified school resource officer, attended several tactical instructor courses. She didn't mention this, but she is also one of the department's tactical medics. And she has over 16 years in law enforcement. What I can tell you is that she's a well-rounded, squared-away officer, and she is an excellent school resource officer. We have nothing but compliments from not only the students, but the parents, and also the staff. So we're very fortunate and very blessed to have her on our staff. And I am here to tell you that she's got 10 years with us.
Thank you, David. I came back to the microphone because I wanted to make one on the record. That's the only reason I came back up. I'll be right back down, Tracy, in just a second or two. This is a certificate of appreciation to Tracy Mann in appreciation for your 10 years of service to the Southern Shores Police Department. The Southern Shores Town Council would like to thank you for your 10 years of service. As a dedicated employee, you have helped make the town of Southern Shores a better place to live. Signed by me. Thank you. I'll bring it down to you.
Thank you. I didn't have to smile. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
This time I'd call on Ms. Teresa Osborne for her annual audit report. Good evening, Teresa.
Good evening. I hope y'all are doing okay tonight.
So far, so good.
I am happy to be here tonight to present the results of your June 30th, 2020 audited financial statements for the town of Southern Shores. The town has received an unqualified or unmodified opinion on its financial statements, which is the best opinion that you can receive. This is outlined on pages 1 and 2 of the audit of the financial statements. This confirms that your financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Additionally, there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses noted, and this is outlined in the internal control report on pages 54 and 55 of the audit report. I'm not going to review the entire report with you tonight because it's 55 pages and I don't think we want to be here long enough to go through all of the pages, but I would like to hit some highlights with you tonight.
Meeting is reconvened. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to apologize to everyone that had to sit through that and hear that. That's, I guess, one of the concerns about being on a public platform such as Zoom, that can happen. I've read about it. I've never seen it, but I don't ever want to see it again. So what we're planning on doing for anyone that, so everyone maybe will know later, we can put this on the record, that we're going to go back and try Zoom live again. If what occurs again, we're just going to cut Zoom off. Anyone who is listening, please send your comments directly to Sheila with public comment. We'll try to get them on that way. And you can go to YouTube. We are live streaming this. So if anyone that can get on YouTube, Town of Southern Shores YouTube live, you can be able to witness it that way. But since we advertise this as a Zoom meeting, we need to try it again. But if that happens again, we're going to just take Zoom offline.
Thank you, Cliff. So Teresa, you're back on board.
Are y'all ready for me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
New experience.
So I'm going to back up just a little bit. So I'm not going to review the entire report with you tonight, but I do want to walk you through a few highlights. Pages 3 through 9 in the financial statements are what are referred to as the management discussion and analysis. This is a condensed summary of the financial statements for the June 30th, 2020 fiscal year. I'm going to skip over pages 10 and 11 for the moment, but I am going to come back to those in a few minutes. If I could get you to turn in your booklet to pages 13 and 14, there's a few things I'd like to review with you there. The first column on each of the pages of 13 and 14 represent the general fund, which for reporting purposes includes your capital reserve fund. And the column referred to as the non-major fund is your cemetery fund. On page 14, you will see that total general fund revenues exceeded expenses by $660,975. Overall revenues came in higher than budgeted, primarily due to a grant received for South Dogwood Bike Path, and all departmental expenses came in less than budgeted, resulting in this $660,975 overage. Ad valorem taxes increased slightly due to a small increase in the tax base of 0.71%. COVID caused a reduction in overall occupancy tax collections of 4.82%, and that primarily happened in the months of March through May of 2020. The town's percentage of those revenues decreased was about 6.5% or $65,000. And your reduction, your 6.5%, is more than the overall 4.82% reduction because your percentage that you get of those revenues is based on your ad valorem tax levies in comparison to the other towns. And so your percentage went down just a little bit in fiscal year 20. There was a small increase in overall land transfer tax collections of 0.47%. And the town's share was reduced by about $3,200, again due to changes in your proportionate share of the tax levy. Also due to COVID, sales tax revenue was down slightly, but the impact to Southern Shores was only about $8,000. The town received $518,000 for Dorian-related expenses. All other revenues were about the same, except interest earnings, which dropped $46,000. Interest earning rates decreased from a high of 2.22% in July of 19 to a low of 0.08% in June of 20. So that's a significant reduction in the investment earning rate. And just to give you a little bit of perspective, $1 million invested at 0.08% yields you about $800. So it's a very low rate. Unassigned fund balance at June 30th, 2020 is $5,995,546. And you'll see this number over on page 13. If you look in that first column, you can see your assets, your liabilities, and your fund balances at the bottom. You can see that your unassigned is $5,995,546. This is an increase of $1,822,225 over the prior year. This unassigned fund balance represents 97% of the total general fund expenses for fiscal year 20. The town has a $1,750,000 working capital fund balance policy, so your unassigned fund balance is well over this amount by $4,245,546. I told you I was going to go back to Exhibit 1 and 2, which are the statements before this. I just want to let you know that what we do is these statements are called the fund statements, and what we do is we convert these fund statements to what we call full accrual statements, which more reflect business type financial statements. And in those financial statements, we include things like fixed assets and debt that you don't see at the fund level. And if you look at the bottom of these statements on Exhibit 3 and 4, you can see how we convert, what kind of items that we add and subtract to get from the fund level financial statements to the full accrual financial statements that you see on Exhibits 1 and 2. The town does not have any traditional debt like loans, but these statements include the town's actuarially determined liability for post-employment benefits like pension and retiree health insurance. You can see these liabilities detailed on page 37 of the notes to the financial statements. Although the liabilities for the law enforcement officer special separation allowance and retiree health insurance are required to be reported in your financial statements, there is no funding requirement, meaning that you are not currently required to set any funds aside for this liability. However, the LGC is recommending that local governments begin having conversations and consider funding these liabilities by setting funds aside in irrevocable trust funds. Overall, in spite of the challenges of COVID-19 towards the end of your fiscal year, the town ended the year in very strong financial condition. I'd like to thank the staff for their assistance, and I am happy to answer any questions that you have this evening.
Thank you. Counsel?
I had one in here somewhere about a statute requirement for the local school. I got it highlighted, I can find it.
Are you looking at that reserve by state statute?
Yes.
The stabilization by state
Yes,
statute?
I was trying to figure out what the stabilization.
Yeah, so what that is at the end of the year, basically, you have recognized revenues that you haven't actually received. For example, at June 30th, you still haven't received your May and June sales tax. You still haven't received your May and June occupancy tax, your June quarter land transfer tax. We record those revenues and then we set up a receivable for those. But that statute makes us reserve that portion of your fund balance for those revenues that we have recorded but have not actually been received. We also have to add an amount in there for any open purchase orders that you had at June 30th. Anything that you entered into a contract for at June 30th, but the contract hadn't been fulfilled at June 30th. And so those two amounts, the receivables and the open purchase orders, become a part of that restricted by state statute. And so the fund balance that I referred to of the $5,995,546, that is after the set aside for the restricted by state statute. That restricted by state statute for you is $692,000. Good question, though.
Thank you, David.
Anybody else?
Anyone else? If not,
No?
thank you.
I
Go ahead.
did get an email from the Local Government Commission just before I got here this evening, and your audit report has been approved and accepted by them. So
Good.
That's good.
pass that on to
Thank
you
you.
as well.
Well done, Bonnie.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Teresa. That's a very positive report, and I appreciate that.
Helps the credit rating.
This time I'll call on our Deputy Town Manager, Planning Director, for his report. Good evening, Wes.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of council. Have a report for y'all tonight for the month of September. A total of 52 permits were issued. Those consisted of 12 zoning permits, 18 building permits, 18 trade permits, 2 lot disturbance permits, 2 lot disturbance demolition permits. The total amount of fees collected in September was $17,083. With respect to the town code update, the town attorney's comments on the zoning chapter have been sent to CodeWrite. Chad Meadows will begin reviewing the comments on October 12th, and we have a call scheduled to discuss them on October 15th. Once the comments have been addressed and necessary revisions have been made, we will send the public hearing draft to the planning board for their review. With respect to planning and code enforcement department positions, advertisements for the positions of permit officer and building inspector, code enforcement officer have been published. Permit officer Dabney Shelton has chosen to retire and has been out of the office for several weeks. She has been and will be missed, and her shoes will be impossible to fill. We've received a good number of applications for that position, and we hope to begin interviews next week. Our part-time building inspector, Buddy Shelton, had previously indicated that he would continue working with us until early February unless someone is hired and familiar with the town prior to that. Our intention is to hire a new full-time building inspector, code enforcement officer, no later than late November or early December, that can shadow Buddy and become familiar with our permit and inspections process. And lastly, with respect to the NCDEQ Division of Water Resources grant application that was submitted earlier this year, we were notified earlier today that we have been tentatively approved for financial assistance through the NCDEQ Division of Water Resources Coastal Storm Damage Mitigation Fund for a beach nourishment project. As directed by council, option 4 in our beach management plan addendum was the project referenced in the application and the submitted materials. The award is pending the successful execution of a grant or a contract rather, between the state and the town, and we should know how much assistance has been approved soon. And we will provide that information to you as soon as we have it. Any questions?
Great to hear about the grant.
Yes, sir. We were thrilled to hear.
Any questions, council?
Just send our regards to Gavin.
We will. Absolutely.
Thank you, Matt. That's from all of us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wes.
Yes, sir.
Good report. This time I'll call on David Cole, our police chief. Good evening again, David.
Evening, Mayor, members of council. September 2020, the incidents, we had 18 incidents. Out of those 18 incidents, which are crimes, we had a total of 24 offenses. Under the criminal arrest, we had 7 people that were arrested for a total of 15 total charges. We had 54 written citations that were issued for a total of 65 total charges. Most of those were moving violations. And then the officers also issued another 31 warning citations, which totaled for 51 total charges. Under ordinances, we had 49. Most of those were failure to display and parking in the right-of-way. And we had a total of 9 motor vehicle accidents for the month of September. We had a total of 1,643 calls for service. Compared to last year in September, that was 1,137. So the calls for service are up a little bit. The only other thing I would like to mention is we have our body-worn cameras now. We've received our funds from the grant, and all the officers have been issued the body-worn cameras, and they're out and being utilized in the field. Still figuring out the learning curve, getting used to them, but we're pretty happy and pretty proud to have those. Any questions, comments?
Of all those charges, is there a mix between local and guest or percentage? Is it all guest or what's the?
Yes.
Or do you know?
Yes.
Well, I'm just, you know,
What I can tell you is that
I've seen some of our own.
it's a mix. I can't tell you how many, but I can tell you that there's a good number of them that are visitors that come through here, but there's also a fair number that are locals as well. That's both in the criminal citations as well as the traffic citations.
Are you seeing the same thing the sheriff's seeing with increases in drug violations and
Yes.
just about everything like that you can
We're
imagine?
seeing a significant increase in our drugs. The officers have been working quite a bit of the drug information and making drug arrests. Those are very time-consuming. We're also seeing a lot more domestics, a lot more drug and alcohol-related situations, and unfortunately, a few suicides, just like everybody else on the beach. Yes.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
our fire department, our fire chief, Ed Limbacher. Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, Council. For the month of September 2020, fire department was dispatched to 80 calls. Pretty simply, one cooking fire confined to the container, 45 med calls, 3 motor vehicle accidents, 1 each of a lockout, search for person in the water, stalled elevator, surf rescue, natural gas leak, 4 calls for service, which are basically our wheelchair program, 1 assist the police or government agency, 4 public service, 1 canceled en route, 1 odor or smoke, 12 alarms, and 2 CO alarms. And that is exactly what we responded to last year, 80. Any questions on that?
Any questions, Council?
Just a quick update on the building. Finally, we're in there. I tell you what, I feel 2 feet taller. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel much better. Everybody's happy now. Finally, it's just it was a long road, but I think that Wes has been in there with the inspection process, as was Buddy, and Buddy really felt that even though it took a long time, in his exact words, where I know it was very painful for you, but in the end, it was a better product because things got corrected as we went because the time was pushed out. So while it did take a little longer, I do think the end run product is really phenomenal. I really can't wait for everyone to see it. Unfortunately, with the COVID problem we're having now, we're not going to have an open house, but we are going to do, we're working on something with Benny Baldwin Productions, as many of you probably know. We're going to do like a virtual type tour walkthrough. We can put it on a town website, our website, our Facebook page, try and get it out there so people can at least see the inside of it and get a feel for what it's like and all the time and energy it went into it. I would just like to say a couple words about some people that really were instrumental in helping us. Obviously, the citizens in the town of Southern Shores, but also to people that actually gave of their own personal self was Southern Shores Realty, Mike and Frank Stone. I don't know if many of you know, they donated that space for us for a year, wound up being nearly 2. So I spoke with Mike today. We're finally out of there, and he couldn't have been more helpful. So thank God that he helped us. And most importantly, the Dare County Board of Ed, because without the garage in the back, which was torturous at the same time, but we could not have done it without them because we would have had nowhere to put the vehicles. So while it was a tough 19 months, it really turned out phenomenal, and we're just glad that we're over the hump. So if anyone has any questions on the building, I'll take that, but we're just kind of cleaning up odds and ends, and hopefully we'll be out of there in the next 30 days or so. So.
Any questions for our chief? Thank you, Chief.
It looks wonderful, is what I would say to you.
Yeah,
Thank you for all your persistence and perseverance.
It really was. I wouldn't recommend someone going through it. I don't know how Councilman Neal does it every day. God bless you. But in the end, I think it really did turn out good. So I think that people will be proud of it. And it was definitely, while I know it was expensive, keep in mind that Dare County just spent $44.5 million on a doggy jail. So to put things in perspective, yes, it was very expensive, but it's a 100-year building. It's going to be here well past all of our lifetimes. So, and there's really no maintenance. So,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you again. Good job, man. Good evening, Cliff.
Thank you. A few things I wanted to go over. If I could first start with the monthly update on the beach nourishment project. And this report is on the town's website, so folks can view it there. We get monthly updates from Coastal Protection and Engineering. They're about a month behind. What's up on the screen here is pretty much what's occurred through the month of August. And as you know, we have presently CPEs working under 2 contracts, and the first one up is the annual monitoring and initial permitting coordination. And what this shows is there's 3 tasks associated with that project. Task 1 is 98% complete, Task 2, 30%, and Task 3 is at 100%, which is the interagency coordination with BOEM and the other permitting groups. But Task 1 services are associated with data acquisition for the 2020 annual monitoring surveys. So they're just about done collecting that data. And then they'll take that data into Task 2. We authorized them to begin and proceed with Task 2 back on August 21st. So that's why they've only completed about 30% of that report to date. But they did through most of August and September work on that assessment and developing the draft monitoring report. And we're told that we should anticipate the draft report by the end of this month. The next task, you'll see the report, and have 5 tasks associated with that. And those, you can see this was authorized back in July 13th of this year. So of the 5 tasks, what's primarily done, task 4 and 5 are the sampling of the beach and both the native beach and then the parts that are going to be nourished. They've completed 50% of the native beach and then 98% of the clasts. Obviously, there's a lot of work still to go with Task 1, the environmental documentation and permitting. Task 2 is the setup of the numerical model. And then Task 3, conducted in the month of March. They were here last week. The boat was here last week to do some surveys. They mobilized out of Norfolk. I don't know how much exactly they were able to get done. I think they had some pretty weather, but then they were affected as well. But that you'll find, again, you can find this on the town's website, but that's the progress that's moving along. The bi-monthly, or I guess now it's quarterly, they'll move these meetings up more regularly, of the different projects that are going throughout the county. It's coordination meeting, that's scheduled for, the next one's scheduled for Thursday of this week, and that's where everybody gets together and updates one another on the progress. The engineers for each one of the projects will be there, opportunity to just share how things are proceeding along.
This is a management meeting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay. Next, I wanted to tell you about the board authorized staff to enter into a contract with the traffic engineer for an analysis of the data that the police department's collected thus far. We've selected JMT Engineering and Planning to work with us on this project. They are out of Waynesville. We had, I think, 4 proposals that were submitted. They were primarily selected because of their professional services that they've offered in the traffic data collection, remote sensing, traffic impact analysis, traffic control plans, and event operations and logistics, which I think we could say every weekend is an event in and of itself. They have 90 days to complete this project. That's 90 business days, so we're looking at sometime the first of the year, I think. They have a lot of the data that they've collected, or that the chief and police department has provided with them. They will run that through, it'll be analyzed and traffic patterns defined and modeled using some specialized software that they have. Based on the data collected, they'll come up with various mitigation best practices and consider those and model those again in the same way to show whether or not the effectiveness of the solutions that they come up with, how impactful they'll be. We expect multiple mitigation measures that they're going to recommend. The report will not only just recommend those mitigation measures, but it'll also include where they'll be placed, the conceptual drawings, implementation guidance, and rough cost estimates. They're going to actually do at least one site visit, and we'll have multiple meetings, I think, either both digitally and on the phone. But the first one of those will be held tomorrow, so I'm anxious to get them engaged and start analyzing all of the work that so many people have already been putting into this for years and years. Next, briefly, Dewberry, the project that we're working on in Dewberry, Dewberry Lane. I can tell you that this week concrete was formed up and should have started being poured, or the forming was done yesterday, and the concrete, I believe, was being poured in place today. That's going to impact, and we're constant communication with the residents, the few residents on that street, about the impact of this project. Their concrete aprons will start being poured Wednesday and Thursday, and so they're going to have an impact, limited access to their driveways, starting probably Wednesday or Thursday for the next 7 days. You can see a lot of the work's been done. The drains in there, the culverts, and the swales and catch basins have been put in place, so that project's moving right along and progressing. And then just briefly, I wanted to share the bulk waste collection days coming up Friday, October the 16th, and folks can start putting their items out, their approved items out, starting this Friday. There's a lot of information on our website about what can be placed and what can't be placed. You'll find information there about the process that David and his guys are going to go through to ensure that the hauler has been to each property, and that we're going to go along with them to make sure that they pick up what is permissible, and if it's left, there's a reason why it's left, and we can make notification. So that'll be starting again. I guess you'll start to see items come out into this week, and collection day is on the 16th. Good news, the annual throwdown is still scheduled to be held. It's about a month late, but it is scheduled for October the 17th. It would be held at the Chickahaw Beach Access. You can find out information, and I think you're all welcome to register for that event by visiting Facebook at the Throwdown Classic. And then just wanted to mention, we are live streaming this meeting. This is kind of a test, and what that means is people, so far so good, I think, but in the future, folks will be able to go to our YouTube live channel and view this meeting live. They won't be able to participate, but they'll be able to see it live, they'll be able to hear it, and I'm really excited about that moving forward. Also wanted to ask that at the right time, and I don't know if there'll be discussion tonight or not, but to ask the council to consider at your October 20th meeting a workshop to focus on the budget. You heard from the auditor that we may have weathered the COVID impacts a little bit better than we had anticipated, or the financial impacts weren't quite as bad. So there is some revenue over expense that I'd like to discuss and share with the council, and to get some feedback and direction moving forward. Those things that were removed from the budget, whether or not we want to try and implement those in the coming year. I'd also like to introduce or start the process of capital improvement planning, maybe a 5-year start of a strategic plan that puts all of our assets and resources together in one place, that you can start to see the needs going out 5 years and beyond. And then also part of that, I think at some point soon, we're going to need to start focusing in on how we're going to structure and fund the municipal service districts, and of course that has a budget impact. I don't know if the council wants to mix those two together, but at some point we need to put that out on the agenda. And then I do want to make just one more comment about the removal of political signs. Police chief and I both have had some complaints. It's inevitable this time of year that we'll start to hear of political signs that are being removed. I do want to make clear that neither one of us take it lightly. It's exercise of free speech, and it's a civic right, and we can't tolerate those that are removing those signs. I don't think a candidate has ever been defeated because someone's removed their sign, so I don't think there's a point or a benefit or a value in that happening. But the police chief and I both take that seriously. It is a Class 3 misdemeanor. It can be considered a Class 3 misdemeanor. And anyone who sees something like this happening, we encourage you to call Dare Central at 473-3444. That way a police officer can be dispatched, and it'll start the process to document moving forward. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Cliff. Do you need to have us go ahead and give you a consensus on your idea of using the October mid-month meeting for a budget discussion?
Yes, if that's something, I don't know that we have, I don't know if you want to wait and see the outcome of this meeting, if there's other items that may need to be added to that might take, maybe jump ahead of the line of some of these things, but at some point I would, so staff can, plan and put these items in front of you and prepare for it, to see if you're okay with that.
Let's get through this and for one of our last items of business before we go into
Okay.
closed session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Cliff?
Yes, I had one. Do you still want to try and get together a October meeting of the Capital Improvements Committee? That way they could do their thing, and then we could have another quarterly meeting in January and make recommendations on street repairs right as we start going into budgeting.
I think that would, the topic of street improvements will be part of what we discuss, if you choose, at your October meeting. As you know, there were 2 streets that were removed out of this fiscal year to be done. And it's been quite a while since that committee met. So I think at some point, we're going to have to get them back together and get their input. Otherwise, it's a committee that's not meeting or a committee that's not functioning.
So I'm sorry, was that a yes or a no on the trying to
That was
get
a
them
punt,
together in
hoping-
October?
Yeah, why
yes.
don't we go through the workshop, because that's going to impact, the 2 streets that's already been prioritized are basically 2 fiscal years worth of budgeting to begin with. So I think if we start looking at a strategic plan prior to convening a CIP, that would be my recommendation. So, October makes sense from a quarterly standpoint, but I don't think it would hurt to do it in November after the meeting. That's my two cents.
Yeah, I guess if the committee met before they knew whether or not they had funds, or they knew whether or not they had a budget to prioritize, that might be premature. So maybe after you all can give some direction, that direction can be carried on to the committee.
You okay with that? Let's see how far we get with the workshop. We might have an answer, and we might not, but if we can go through the workshop and then schedule something after.
I'm good with that.
I think you all are.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can shoot for something in early November
Yes,
for the CIP.
CIP meeting.
and I think they would still have time to go out and check roads and, come to a January meeting with recommendations, and then that could be figured
Follow on.
into the budgeting.
Following on what we already had, which is those 2
Yes.
streets. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
We'll discuss this at one of our last business items this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cliff. Town Attorney's report.
I don't have anything to report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good to see you.
General public comment. Anyone signed up to speak?
None on there.
In which case, I'll close general public comment this time. Moving ahead on our old business, nothing there. And then the new business, beach nourishment easements, tab 1. I think I'm going to call on our town manager to talk about this with us.
And I'll probably lean some on the town attorney with this. But back in, I think it was July, we had 2 discussions. One was there are 2 paths here. One is the route of the need to be able to add it to the condemnation legislation, and that's somewhat of a separate discussion item from this. But also at that same council meeting, you all directed staff to go ahead and start seeking easements voluntarily. And in your packet, you have a draft easement that we're asking you to approve, I guess, to form. But before staff can accept these easements, you all have to take action authorizing us to accept them and get them recorded. In order for us to go to the Register of Deeds and record this easement, we need to have the authority to be able to do that. And that's one of the two things we're asking for you to do tonight in this resolution. You'll see on the second page, there's two parts. One is, it speaks to the voluntary easements, and that's why I say it's in a draft form, or you're approving it to form, because these easements can be modified as need be. Preferably, the easements, it is a one-size-fits-all, that everybody can sign the exact same easement, and that's what we hope to achieve. But this resolution would give the town manager and the town attorney or their designees are authorized and directed to procure beach nourishment easements in the form attached hereto as Exhibit A from the owners of the affected properties, and may negotiate easements, reasonable modifications on terms satisfactory to the town and its consultants. So I guess what we're asking you all to do is to approve this resolution so we can start recording some of these easements. And then also, if you have any input on the easements or about how they're written, how it's presented, how it comes across to the public, then we can take that into account now. But again, we have if you authorize this, we have the latitude and the leeway to be able to work out some issues that individuals may have that they want to see added to this easement.
Everybody understand that?
That's the first part. I mean, there's also a budget amendment. There's a, and Ben can explain this better than I can, but there's an additional legal cost at getting these easements in place that could grow. This is kind of this budget amendment is almost at a best case scenario, because obviously if you have to start to condemn, then it's going to cost more. But there is some minimal title work that needs to be done, or at least some making sure that the easements are written, addressed, have the right PIN number, the right parcel number, they're addressed to the right property owner. So there's some legal doings. It's not just as simple as looking up the address and sending them an easement. It's got to be written to them specifically, and that's why there's a cost associated with that.
Any questions about that, council? Yes, Jim?
This is on page 2 of the easement. The whole first paragraph there seems to give unfettered access to the town to any part of somebody's property. Can we just limit that to beach access from the beach side, or?
Which paragraph, Jim?
It's page 2, the first paragraph.
The first full paragraph or the first?
Well, it's got a number 1 next to it,
Item 1.
about a third of the way down.
It's item 1.
Item 1.
It doesn't allow access to the entire property. It allows access to the entire easement area, but it defines the easement area as basically the beach area. So you don't have access to the entire property. You have access only to the easement area for the Nourishment project. There's an additional pedestrian, like a walk up and survey or inspect, that somebody could go along the edges of the property maybe to get there. But to do the actual Nourishment project, there's no right for any equipment to go anywhere except for the beach.
Well, does this easement allow them for maintenance, like say the town goes out there and does beach grass plantings or sand fencing? Can they pull in their driveway and access the beach from there?
They would do that from the beach as well.
Okay, so this clearly in legal terms restricts access to the property from the beach side.
Yes.
Oh,
There's a pedestrian easement where you can walk, where somebody could walk from
Yes.
the property side for the purpose of inspection and, if necessary, observation, maintenance, or repair. But maintenance or repair of the beach, actually working on the Nourishment project, would be done from the beach. We could take out, and it's in a
But
different,
the
it's in a
access-
different paragraph than you're talking about. It's at the top of the page of page 2, the last line or two of the first group of, that's the paragraph that doesn't begin on page 2, but begins on page 1 and comes into page 2. We could knock out the words maintenance and repair and make it so it's just for observation, and surveys, something like that if you wanted to. But that's the intent of that portion. The actual work for the Nourishment project, to do work, is intended to only be upon the beach access and to come from along the beach to get there.
Am I correct that we're granting the authority to negotiate these easements, not necessarily construct the language for you?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So if anything, you're just looking for sort of the high-level guidance of presentation of the language.
Yeah,
And we need to express our intent that we want to restrict access to the beach for purposes of construction, not necessarily utilizing the rest of the property.
well,
which
it's
is already
clear,
laid out.
it's clear that that you won't be able to utilize the rest of the property to do a beach nourishment project.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to do any maintenance or repair. I mean, even under the language that's they're talking about maintenance or repair, you wouldn't be able to do that except for via a pedestrian work. So that there just isn't any nourishment work that gets done by walking. It's done by big equipment. So the reality of doing the beach nourishment, of doing any work on any other portion of the property other than the beach and accessing it from the beach is not a reality. But we can change it so that pedestrian access is even more limited to just being surveying and observation. There's other ways to limit that as well. But where this comes from is that this is an easement that has a basis, that language has a basis in 20 years of different easements in different towns across the state, or across the coast of the state. The rest of the state, of course, doesn't do much beach nourishment. But that similar language is it's in voluntary easements in most of the Dare County towns, all the ones we represent. It's in theirs, their most recent ones. I think it's in the ones that are in Atlantic Beach, Emerald Isle, probably Topsail. I think I looked at all those today to see, and I think 3 out of 4 of them had the same language in there, from 2001, 2002. So that easement is what's been built upon and made changes as projects have progressed within the state. This easement is what we would consider the result of the learning process of dealing with beach nourishment and beach nourishment easements throughout the state, and as they've come through our firm and come through our clients over time. But I'm not tied to any language necessarily. If you want something to be one way or another, we can definitely change it.
Can we tie it down and make it a little more clear that access is for the easement only and accessible from the beach side only? I think tightening down on pedestrian access through somebody's property is important because the town may have a beach grass planting or sand fencing project, and it may be a lot easier to pull into somebody's driveway and transport that material down and then do a whole stretch in the beach. I mean, it's not the way I would do it, but
Is this
I just say no reason for people need to be on the front side of their property or anything.
is this the same type, same easement language that we used at Pelican Watch?
It's very similar, yes.
And I do think it's important to note that these are voluntary.
Yes.
This, when we get into what we're going to ask you to give us the authority to condemn, then that's going to take some discussion, I think. But this, anyone that signs this is willingly and voluntarily giving us these rights.
Yeah, we're not imposing this as an absolute, they're being asked to sign an easement.
Oh, I know, yes.
I have to say, I agree with Jim, though, that we ought to ask only for what we need and to try to keep it as narrow in scope as we can. And because so many of us are not attorneys, I would if there's any way we could put some sort of introductory statement on the front page of this easement that says the purpose of this easement is specifically for a Town of Southern Shores beach nourishment related activities, just so it's obvious what the purpose of this easement is. That's all we're asking for. And I don't mean to say it like that. We're asking them to give us something. So, but I just would like, if there's any way we could make it just easier to quickly look at the first page of this and say, this is an easement that allows the Town of Southern Shores to do a beach nourishment project.
As in like a cover letter, or
Well,
just like a cover letter when it's mailed out?
Well, we're going to have a cover letter,
Yeah.
for sure, but if there would be a way to put it actually on the legal document that gets recorded, if that's possible. If that's asking for too much, then just disregard.
Add whatever you like.
Then we will,
Okay.
and we can add that.
Just- When you,
Yes, I
Look,
think
there-
so. And again, I think it's all about the easement area only. That's what it's all about, the easement area. We don't need to be pulling in people's driveways.
But you were talking about doing that, putting in
Yeah.
a driveway and putting in sand fence. You can't, you wouldn't give them, you wouldn't ask for that.
No.
In the past projects that you've been engaged with, both of you, I mean, has there been a real necessity to grant the pedestrian-only access on the greater part of the property?
No,
They could do that with permission of the property owner, like using the Hillcrest Beach to take stuff out, but they could, but I don't think we should have it in our easement that we can do things like that.
I don't necessarily think that you do, but we can definitely make it clearer.
I think it's important to make it clear that, access is for beach nourishment from the beach side only.
See, I see that's written, town may use the easement area, I mean, there's a whole statement of tacit.
The town doesn't
I
have.
think
any-
a cover letter with like, here's what we're trying to do,
Yeah.
here's the rights that we're gonna look for, here's what our restrictions are, here's what we can't do.
I just don't want to see us get down the road and then find out we limited ourselves to something.
I kind of, I mean, we send surveyors out the property unencumbered all the time.
Somewhere in all this documentation, it states where we would be hearing from the public on potential changes to the easements or whatever. But that's going to be a big one right there, I think. We might as well address that one up front.
Are you referring to, you may be referring to the municipal service district where they can come forward and present a case for being excluded from the municipal service district.
Okay.
The statute requires you to have a process which people can come and try and convince you to take them out of the MSD.
Okay.
So any questions, Ben, what we're trying to accomplish here?
I think we making it specific and only taking out of the easement what we actually need, narrowing it.
And you're comfortable with that, Cliff?
And Mr. Mayor, I think what I heard is that when someone makes a motion to approve the resolution, that they should add that Exhibit A should have 3 things modified about it. 1, there should be a purpose statement added at the top that the purpose is for beach nourishment. 2, that the pedestrian-only access easement should be limited and not use the terms maintenance and repair, should just be for surveying or observation, and probably should have some reasonable limitations, maybe pointed toward the boundary of the property. And then 3rd, that we should clarify that access to and use of the actual easement area for beach nourishment will be only via the beach. I think it does that generally in the language, but we can certainly make that clearer. If someone who is making the motion to approve the resolution would ask that we modify Exhibit A to do that as well, then I will modify the Exhibit A to do that, and then we will send them out. And if people sign them, we'll record them, and if people want to negotiate something about them, we'll consider what they're asking and go from there.
Ben, I hate to ask this, but can you read item number 2 again? Because there was a reference that emphasized pedestrian access only. And I'm thinking,
He's saying
just say access, you
I mean,
know.
we can take the pedestrian access out completely if you want. That would be the other change
That's
to item
on,
2.
that's on the landward side of the house.
Yes.
That's the, yes.
Yeah, I'd say take that out
Okay,
from
so
there.
all access, we can, so you would want to change 2, you would want to change 2, 1 is the purpose statement about beach nourishment, 2 is to no pedestrian access from the upland side of the property, and then 3, clarify that all access for the project and for any other purposes will be from the beach and along the beach and only on the beach.
That sounds good. I'm not sure how you changed number 2 though, but,
It's pretty easy. I got that covered.
okay.
I
it's
was
just
okay
in-
with the first suggestion that you just take maintenance and repair and not necessarily restrict pedestrian access in its totality. I mean, the first sort of recap of the motion that you gave, Ben, I mean, that's a motion I'd be prepared to try to stumble through if everybody wanted to. And then we can discuss it.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution, item number 7A of the agenda, and to instruct the manager and the town attorney to add a purpose statement to the easement and modify the pedestrian access to exclude maintenance and repair, and to clarify the terms of access to the easement as discussed. How they do?
Pretty good.
That's good, I'll second it for you.
Does that cover the budget amendment as well?
No, I
No,
was going to do
that's
that
a separate item.
motion because I thought we might be tagging
All right,
over that.
all right, just making sure.
I'll,
So,
I'll second the motion.
I already
you
seconded.
second, Leo
Leo
seconded. the
seconded.
motion.
Oh,
I've got
okay.
a motion and a second.
My bad, okay.
Sheila, do you have that? Any further discussion?
Just to ask Mr. Gallo, you got a good idea of what we're trying to call for here?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion? If not, I'd call for a motion to approve the amendment that Matt made to the original staff recommendation.
We got a second.
You got a motion, you got a second?
No further discussion, so I think we're ready to vote.
All right. All in favor of the resolution as presented, indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Same sign. Motion was made and carried unanimously, Sheila. Now, the next question is, we need a motion to approve the budget amendment to allow this to happen.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Jim.
And I will second.
Thank you. Any further discussion relative to the budget, to the beach nourishment issue, beach nourishment funding?
This is,
Budget amendment.
this is for the cost for
Legal costs.
easement filings, right?
Yep.
It could go up.
Could go up.
Yeah, and I just had a quick discussion, I mean, can we roll this into our total funding for beach project, like reimburse ourselves? Okay. Just everything we spend, I want to keep that in mind.
And
We can amortize it over.
And if I could add, that the estimate that's provided there, as Mr. Ogburn said, that's the estimate to do the minimal title work requested, not full title searches as the estimate says on its face. We did the math on that, and it was a whole lot more. And also, there's been some question, it seems, as to where this cost comes. It's based on our past experience with other clients. We've done this before. And that's where the estimates came from. It could ultimately end up being lower. It could end up being higher. If you have to condemn any, it will be a lot higher. The legal fees will be considerably higher than what is quoted for this. This is just to do the voluntary easements if that's how it goes.
Thank you, Ben. So I've got a motion to go ahead and approve the expenditure of the transfer of funds.
You
I've got a second. All right. We've had some discussion. Any further discussion on that?
Yeah, just a real quick question, Ben Burlington. I mean, did you take a look at like some of the other towns and do sort of a per property easement cost? I mean, did you ever break it down?
Yes.
And you cost compared, and that's what this estimate kind of reflects, at least time invested.
Robert Hobbs, my partner who's here, is, he's done this before. He's going to be the one doing this. He went back and looked at, he looked at his past records for how much it costs, and that's how he came up with the numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
So all in favor of the motion to, as presented, indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. No one's opposed. Motion been made and carried unanimously, Sheila. So the next item of business, if I'm not mistaken, is
Appointment of the Reconstruction Task Force.
yes, annual appointment of the Reconstruction Task Force, which is, the town manager and I talked about this yesterday, about maybe changing the format for this for the future, but this is what we're working with right now, so pull that up.
Is this an annual event?
It is, yeah. And
Is
there
there any
should be a-
reason it couldn't be?
There may be a better way to do this. Cliff could explain that to us at some point if you want to. You could. I'm sorry, Wes, you could explain it to us. Somebody better explain it to us.
No problem. Good evening again, Mayor, members of council. This is an annual appointment. The Town Code, Section 12-69 specifically says annually appoint. And this is based on, this has been in the Town Code for some time. Our previous hazard mitigation plan also had it in there. And our land use plan, current land use plan adopted and certified 2012, says we shall have a standing reconstruction task force. Doesn't say annually. So we most recently, if you recall, we updated, we have a new hazard mitigation plan. Annually is no longer in that either, but annually still remains in section 12-69. And in the town code update, we did request that change. That is in there as well, to take out the word annually. So that it's not something we would have to do over and over. But essentially, it breaks down to mayor, mayor pro tem, planning board chair, planning board vice chair, town manager, deputy town manager, planning director, police chief, fire chief, SSCA president, CPOA president, construction community representative. And in this case, I've spoken with, and he's volunteered to serve in that capacity as construction community representative is Mr. David Buchanan with Compass Edge Construction. He helped us out with Hurricane Dorian and damage assessment. So I was having a conversation with him the other day, and I brought this up, and he said he'd be honored to serve on this task force if y'all would be willing to appoint him to it. So at some point, this might be something we won't have to do annually, but we feel that is something that is important that we make sure we keep in place.
I agree with that, but is there any time, should it be looked at every 2 years, or do these categories, do we ever add or subtract from them? That would- in your experience.
The individuals, the makeup of it comes from the town code, so we could change that. The council can make amendments to that however they see fit. And the hazard mitigation plan and the land use plan, they both just refer to having a reconstruction task force. But in the town code update, if I recall correctly, we keep the composition the same.
Yeah, so
But if and when, whenever we get to that point of discussing it, the composition can be, you all could certainly make changes to that if you think it's necessary.
I just thought if it stays the same year after year after year, then why do we go through this every year? Just do it like for a 2-year period, every 2 years, review it and approve it or disapprove it.
That's a possibility. I mean,
That's my suggestion. I just see that.
I mean, as elections and planning board members come and go, as well as staff,
They come and go.
they will come and go, but the only
The actual
individual would be the construction community representative, and if they've been on there 2 or 3 years, then yeah, it may be necessary to make a change.
We don't want to, I gotta accept 2 years.
Okay, well, we can
Certainly
certainly
I don't know what
keep that in mind next
peers
time.
say, but that's just a thought.
I don't think that would necessarily be an issue. I'm happy to hear you, that was the exact name in my mind, so I'm happy with David.
You are previous
Yeah, I'm the
representative.
resigning.
Now that you're on
I
council.
was thinking of 3 people and David was on the top of it.
We're
So.
glad, good, glad to hear.
You know, just throwing an idea out there, I don't know if it's a good idea for government or not, but on this hazard mitigation plan for like after the hazard is hit and people are trying to mitigate, maybe include ICO or, what is it? They're up here on Skyline, Outer Banks Community Foundation. Just some of the local avenues that can help steer some help to people if they, I don't know, it's just an avenue to think of.
Sure.
To add in their perspective.
Can anybody remember last time it was activated? Or wasn't?
The last time what, I'm
The
sorry?
task force hasn't actually been activated.
Not at least since I've been
Yeah,
here.
I mean, I don't even think during Isabel was activated.
Been since November 2009, they have not met. I'm not sure about prior to that. I would think
don't-
not, because it refers to the circumstances that would follow a catastrophic event.
Yeah.
So knock on wood, they don't have to be.
Yeah.
Anything else, council?
No, thanks.
Thank you, Wes.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Yeah.
I need a motion, council, to appoint the task force with subsequent second and vote of approval. So I have a motion to appoint the task force.
So moved.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you. Thank you.
You can get the second.
Do I have a
then.
second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any further discussion about this?
No.
All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed,
Aye.
same sign. Motion made and carried unanimously to approve the appointed task force. Thank you. Let's look at our, back at page 1. This time I'd open general public comment for the second time. No one wishes to speak. You want to check it, David? I don't think anybody's been in here, have they? Having no one signed up, I'll close public comment. The only thing I have to say, just briefly before we go into closed session, is that I want to thank this council for their efforts and their dedication to their task and the job we're doing. I think you all are contributing, to me anyway, immeasurably to making the town a better place to live. And I appreciate your efforts, sincerely. And I thank you. I have no other comments. Council members? I'll start with our Mayor Pro Tem.
Just would encourage everybody to go get their flu shots.
Yeah.
Got mine yesterday. Thank you.
Where'd you go?
To my pharmacy.
Anybody else have anything more to say?
I have a brief thing that's not really a comment. It's kind of a question for the chief that I should have asked when you were giving your report. With the schools open, no, the police chief, with schools opening, all those right-of-way tickets started showing up in my head, and we don't know what the drop-off situation will be like up there. I know they changed some of that access. Would there be any leniency to grant some limited right-of-way parking during that drop-off period?
And could I encourage the chief to please use a microphone, like maybe Wes's or?
And we don't have to do anything, I'm just throwing it out there, because we don't know what that situation's gonna look like.
Good question. Matter of fact, I think there was construction over there today.
Yeah.
We're anxious to see how that turns out as far as the way the drop-off and everything is going to be, plus with the new fire station, if it's really open. This virtual stuff. So we're going to be very lenient because it's the whole geographic area over there has changed, obviously. So, yeah, obviously, we're going to have additional officers when available to kind of be over there, but we're not going to be looking at seriously enforcing and writing tickets and that type of stuff. We've been working with and continue to work with the school to try and come up with, what'll work for everybody, but what'll most importantly be safe for the kids now.
Yeah.
And I think what they're doing is going to be a big improvement, because part of the problem with the old system was that you would have all these people that would just park their cars right there and stack. where people were supposed to be dropping them off, and then you would have kids and that coming in between the cars that are stacked there. And there was some pretty serious near misses, so I think that's going to be eliminated, hopefully. But we'll be working with the school. But that's a good question.
I thought with the new emergency zoning powers of the council that we could waive some right-of-way restrictions on that.
Just for pedestrians?
Just for Matt, yeah, no.
I didn't think there was
Yeah.
an event.
No, I mean, I've looked at the plan Wes showed me, and hopefully it'll work. But
Yep.
It's been
And if it don't, we'll work it until it does.
I'm offering support.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anybody else have any-
I just want to give a quick update on the tourism board, which all of you probably understand or seen. July occupancy was up 37%, which that's for the month of July, and year to date, because of that, the occupancy is ahead about 3%. Unfortunately, the meal side is not having that same success. They're off, on the month of July, they were off 21%, and for the calendar year, they're off 30%. So anything we can do to go help them out by buying a meal or two at some of these restaurants would be really great, because some of them are really hurting. Wright Brothers in Fort Raleigh are showing declines, although now that the building is open at the Wright Brothers, traffic is for that week or so they've seen an increase. Of course, the Cape Hatteras campgrounds in that area is just going
Crazy.
bonkers. Halleck and his Rangers are having a challenge keeping up with all of it. If any of you want to go out and see what's going on at the tourism board, they have redesigned the website there, and it's outerbanks.org. It's been redesigned. You can see all the information that you need to see there, from who the board is, budgets, event grants, all that good stuff. Then the 5th of November is their 8th annual OBX Tours Summit. That was normally held in May. It's going to be held here in November. It'll be up at the Sanderling Inn. And the theme this year is the future of Outer Banks tourism. It starts about 9 o'clock, runs to about 3. I've been to them, and they've normally been pretty good. And just my last comment is, if you missed the blood drive, Red Cross blood drive at Holy Redeemer today, which the Chamber's sponsoring, it's there again tomorrow from 12 to 6. But you do need to have an appointment. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Leo. Anyone else have any comment? Jim, Matt, Elizabeth? If not, this time I'll ask we go into closed session.
Did we want to discuss our October
The workshop.
workshop
agenda.
before we
Yeah,
do that?
glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
I'm not aware now of any agenda items that we need to schedule for the 20th. So I wanted to offer to see if it was a good time to start a budget discussion. Look back the effects of last year's fiscal year. We got the audit now. See what kind of position we're in to maybe catch up on some things that were cut from this year's budget to add back. And then also to start looking ahead a little bit and going beyond just a yearly budget, but to look at maybe a 5-year capital improvement plan that kind of starts the budget, takes a look at all of our assets and infrastructure.
And do you want to also have us discuss or begin a discussion on MSDs?
Yeah, at some point, I mean, I think we're going to have to start that process statutorily, all the things that we have to put in place to advertise and to make notice and to do the mailings and have the public hearing. Probably need to start that in January. So I don't know if it's too much to have at that October meeting, but you all need to have a discussion on the MSD and how you want to structure it sometime between now and I think the end of the year.
I would like to keep that October meeting pretty much focused on budget, long-range plan, CIP stuff of that nature, and then maybe November, we could talk about the MSDs.
I'm okay, I think that's great, because I mean, really, what we're gonna add back in, or potentially, I mean, I'd like to see a framework of a long-range plan, rather
Yeah.
than just
We've talked
adding it
about
back
this
in.
long-range plan for so long,
I could develop.
and we haven't
more
gotten
of
it
that.
off the ground till now.
That sounds good. Let's do long-range planning in October and maybe start an MSD discussion in November.
Long-range planning to include budget consideration.
Yeah,
Yes, I think so, Cliff. Everybody on board with that? That's good to talk about.
yeah, it's fine.
That'll be a workshop
Thank you,
meeting,
Jeff.
9 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah,
whatever the date is.
And then on the flip side of that, we'll be trying to pull together the CIP meeting
Early.
November.
in early November so
Yes,
that
sir.
they can present something in our January or whatever meeting.
Okay. That's like a plan. Thanks.
Very good.
Thank you, Council. We're all set with that. Anything else you need as far as a motion for that? We don't, do we? Okay. And now, and let me try again.
just one thing, our next meeting will be on the 4th,
We've done about our November meeting.
yeah, because of the election. Yeah, but I mean, in the past, we had to do, because this was being used, but we aren't using it this year. I know.
I'm
But
just
I just
teasing.
want to make sure it's clear, because somebody's going to ask the
I
question.
would've showed up here Tuesday night, so.
Yeah, I can't adjust.
If you already take that,
Yeah. I just want to clarify.
so our meeting date is good. This time I'd try again to go into closed session under General Statute 143-318.11A1 to approve closed session minutes and general accounts. So that being said, I would open closed session.
We have to have a motion. I move that we go to closed session.
I'm sorry.
Second.
You need to do that via motion, Mr. Mayor.
That's a motion.
I'll second it.
Leo seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We're now in closed session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Council, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, folks.